speaking of having trouble, Dave Rubin is very upset. And this is something that you would imagine he would be very excited about. Here he is, featured in Quillette.
Just sort of the IDW Bible.
Magazine. It's the IDW Bible. It is printed out of Australia, is my understanding. And I believe Dave Rubin was just in Australia not too long ago with his Norm Peterson. What's that guy's name again?
Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson's tour. And here he is. They pictured him sitting on the set of Tucker Carlson's White Nationalist show. No, not White Nationalist. I'm sorry, Fox News show. I misspoke. And they basically go on to say that folks like Rubin in particular, they try and pretend that they're not conservatives, but that really in many respects they are conservatives. And they need to make a decision. I mean, this is like one of those really helpful pieces. I mean, coming from the
it's amazing that it came out in Quillette.
Yeah, I mean, this
is the best Quillette piece ever by far.
And this is and it's asking, is the intellectual dark web politically diverse? Because the whole thing about the intellectual dark web is that it's not a partisan operation, that it's just ideas, and it really just champions ideas. And all ideas. That's why we'll have people on who are, white nationalists. We'll have somebody on. I'll interview somebody who, even Nigel Farage, who is the
UKIP leader in Britain.
Yes, and the UKIP. How would you like a fair
sort of nationalistic anti-immigrant?
Right, an anti-immigrant booted a woman out of their organization because he called her a Nazi.
Or she left the organization because Nigel Farage called her a Nazi.
Okay, so when you get chastised, it's sort of like it's sort of like I don't know, when some rock star tells you, hey, take it easy at the party, man. You're getting out of control with your partying or something like that.
It's like Mao calling you a third worlder.
Right, exactly. And so this piece basically says that the IDW makes claims that they are not conservatives, but rather mostly a collection of disillusioned liberals looking for a place to have honest conversation.
Comes from this graph. I don't know. You can see this here. It's not terribly convincing to me. This guy tried to make a graphic that showed all these guys as leftists. He scores this on a lot of different, like vaccination has the same weight as, say, wealth inequality is a problem. Some of these I know for a fact aren't true. Jordan Peterson does not agree that wealth inequality is a problem. Well, he thinks it's a problem, but one that cannot be dealt with in any way.
Right. It's an inevitability.
Yeah.
Right. Which, of course, has... So, like these are all, supposedly leftist positions that they take. Positions left of center, right? And, but the author just says, take a look at Dave Rubin's timeline. He relentlessly attacks on Twitter. He relentlessly attacks Democrats, retweets Trump Jr., hangs out with Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk. Proof is in the pudding. Some of the other people are debatable, but clearly the chart is missing something when he looks at that chart about Dave Rubin. And he writes, after gathering a lot of data, it's important to do a sanity check, which means taking a step back and making sure that the big picture that emerges from the data makes sense. In this particular case, if it's true that the IDW members, with the exception of Shapiro, align almost entirely with liberals on the main issues that divide liberals and conservatives, then we should reasonably expect them in practice to align politically with liberals and not conservatives. Right? I mean, if you hold these beliefs in a genuine and sincere fashion, you would align with your ideological colleagues to make sure that those proposals actually come to fruition or remain. And he writes, yet, as I point out in my tweet, this is clearly not the case with Rubin, or as even the briefest glances at reveals. He relentlessly attacks Democratic politicians, but never Republicans, regularly appears at speaking events with conservative organizations as Turning Point USA, and frequently retweets and is retweeted by prominent conservatives like Trump Jr., Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens. In other words, while the data suggests Rubin should be politically aligned with liberals and against conservatives on the main issues that divide them, in practice, the opposite is true. And he goes on to talk about how there's a different type of realignment on YouTube. And that there's a question of like you can posture as something, but fight for something that is quite different from your posture.
Beto O'Rourke.
Right. Or, but we can see it in that regard, or just sort of like, you know, the Fox News Democrat that they used to bring on. This guy, Pat Caddell, for instance, who I believe just passed away. You know, there's a way in which you can sort of maintain an identity, but actually, as I think a lot of these IDW people would tell you, that your identity is secondary to what you actually do and advocate for. And so Rubin got pretty upset as he was flying home from somewhere, I don't know where. And he writes a long discourse that he then cuts up and puts in there because he had a lot to say. This is the most I think he's ever said.
I mean, who wouldn't?
And he talks about the article implies that I refuse to extend the same courtesy to the left because he has a lot of rightists on. Now, understand, if I'm not mistaken, Dave Rubin says the problem with the left today is that they've become like SJWs. They've become authoritarian. They don't allow people to, you know, speak and whatnot. So he's now defined who the left is. It's people like me, right? I mean, I don't agree with his assessment of me, but he's basically, that's who he's talking about. He's being very critical of these people. In fact, he won't even have people like me on. But then he claims that he has had some on the left, like Eric and Brett Weinstein, one of whom I guess works with Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel, yep.
Sam Harris, who, but for the Islamophobia that doesn't exist.
And IQ stuff, generally.
Majad Nawaz, who apparently is a good friend of Sam Harris's, according to Sam Harris, are firmly on the left. I don't know what that means. So how could they firmly be on the left?
It's funny that all the favorite guests on the left are also his friends.
And also they're in the IDW. That's weird.
The only people on the quote left that Dave Rubin will sit down with to have a conversation with are ones that he's assured beforehand aren't going to be challenging to him.
Of course. Of course. So Dave Rubin has an opportunity to actually show the world that he can have a conversation with someone he considers to be a true leftist. Someone who he considers to be, you know, out of bounds. I mean, if you want to exchange ideas, let's exchange ideas. Let's have that conversation. He won't. And I think this is why he's getting that criticism. And so good for Quillette for making that criticism. I mean, for gosh sakes, this is an opportunity. Why are you, let me ask you this. Bring it in a little bit. Can you do that? Yeah, let me do this. I'll do this. Why are you so afraid, Dave? I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to have a conversation with you. I am sorry that the contributor on my program did a video where he called you stupid. But I took that video down. I made him apologize to me personally because I was offended by it. I pulled his commissary rights for 3 days. He didn't get to have lunch there. So I don't know what else I can do, but let's do this. Let's do this so that Quillette has to write another article saying, we were wrong. Okay, thank you.
They did add a correction, apparently. This article has been updated to include reference to 2 criticisms of the Data and Society report, Alternative Influence Broadcasting and the Reactionary Red on YouTube by Rebecca Lewis. But I think they might declare that a victory. No, maybe not. Some people are saying they retracted it, but they haven't retracted this article.
Well, I don't know how you retract it. It's an opinion piece.
Right.
And that, what's amazing is that these guys, all these IDW guys that Dave Rubin cites, they go to great lengths to stifle any critique of theirs that are even opinion. That are opinion. I'm only issuing opinions. I haven't stated any facts about Dave Rubin other than he got funding from libertarian organizations supported by the Koch brothers, which he then, first denied and then sort of said was no big deal and doesn't implicate, I love that thing where you get a big chunk of money from an organization and you don't have to do anything for it. That's great. I want to get in on that. How do I get in on that? I want some of that cash. I like that.